Okay, hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Munirah binti MATILA in Saudi, and I the first presenter for Group 4. And for today, Group 4, which is NERISHAH binti BENHAR, LAILA QHASHAH, SITI NURAISYAH, and Muhammad MUSTAQIM, will be presenting a topic which is Islamic versus Western approaches to thinking. So for this topic, we are going to cover three uh, main point, which is introduction, arguments, and conclusion. So for argument, we are more specific on Islamic and Western scholars, similarities and differences. And the last one is the advantages of Islamic approaches in thinking. So let's move on to introduction. Before we start thinking about how Islamic and Western approaches being viewed as different parts, what is thinking actually? So thinking, according to a research, thinking is a complex mental which is innate and learned, skillful perception process that involve cognitive human abilities and sense to understand and generate ideas, which is to make sense of experience about our nature, our life, our existing worlds around us. So how does actually thinking issue being divided into two parts, which are Islamic and Western views? So I think this is because, or this is probably due to the issue created by the media. Media makes people see each other differently. So for example, here I give some part from the Western, which is the Westerners sees Muslim as terrorists because of the media portray what happened in Afghanistan, while Muslims actually see Westerners as racist because of the judgment towards Muslim women that wear hijab, in which actually this can be contradict to each other if they happen in that situation. I mean, if they already in that situation. Okay, so I will go to the arguments. So I will focus on the Western scholars. So the Western scholar that I choose here is Aristotle. So Aristotle was born on 384 before Common Era in Greece and also died on 322 in Euboea. So he also father of logic. He known as father of logic, and we call it as the philosopher. Uh, and also he established his own highly influential school called Lyceum. And the most important part is actually he wrote a book entitled The Organon, which means the instruments. So how does actually Aristotle get fathers of logic or philosopher title name? So actually he investigated a lot and contributed a lot in all subjects that related to us in today's modern times, which are natural sciences, the arts, psychology and education, and the most important part is logic, which is he alone was the systematic founder. So, what I can say about logic, he actually grabs the overriding necessity of determining the rules of correct reasoning. He explained the validity and that characterize the four fundamental type of categorical propositions and their relations. Okay, that's how actually Aristotle does for logic. So, before I end my part, I will say some best quote for education that has been said by Aristotle, which is educating the mind without educating the heart is not educational. It's not education at all. So I think that's all from me. I will pass to the next presenter. Thank you for listening. Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is NERISHAH binti BENHAR and I will be presenting about one of the famous Islamic scholars, which is Tan Sri Professor Dr. Said Muhammad Naqib Al-Atas. He was born on 5th September 1931 in West Java. Dr. Said Muhammad Nakib Al-Atas received his early education in Sukabumi and Johor Bahru. He later studied at the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst, England, and subsequently at the University of Malaya, Singapore, McGill University, Canada, and the University of London, England. He received his master's degree and PhD from McGill University and University of London, respectively, with a special focus on Islamic philosophy, theology, and metaphysics. And one of his most significant work is his 2 volumes doctoral thesis entitled The Mysticism of Hamza Fansuri that remain the most important and comprehensive work to date on one of the greatest and perhaps most controversial Sufi scholars in the Malay world. He had also held various positions, and some of them are head of the Division of Literature in the Department of Malay Studies in University of Malaya. And between 1968 and 1970, he served as the Dean of the Faculty of Arts. In 1970, he became one of the founders of National University Malaysia, which we know as University Kebangsaan Malaysia, and he was also responsible for the conceptualization of the Islamic University, which he initially formulated at the first World Conference on Muslim Education, which was held in Mecca in 1979. So, Tan Sri Said Nakib has made significant contribution to the contemporary world of Islam in the domains of the Islamization of contemporary knowledge and of Muslim education. So that's all from me. I will pass this to the next presenter. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is MUSTAQIM MUSTAPHA, matric number 2027877. Right here, I'm going to present about the similarities between Islamic and Western approaches to thinking. Before I go through and deeply to this subtopic, here I would like to highlight the meaning of similarity. There will be 2 main points of similarities. First of all, in scope of knowledge, which is importance of knowledge. According to Western perspective, the main subject of Western philosophy, it is intellectualism united with humanism, and these 2 tendencies met and blended in Aristotle and Plato. Well, Islam perspective shown that the first verse in the descended to Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him was Iqra, meaning read. Opening the door to read, write, and ponder, the Quran urged to mankind to think, ponder, reflect, and acquire knowledge that would bring them closer to God and His creation. Allah repeated 2,800 and 950 times respectively in the sacred text about knowledge, about ilmu. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in Surah Al-Majadalah verse 11, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا عِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ, which means Allah will raise those who have believed among you and those who were given knowledge by degrees. From these 2 views, it can show that is very concerned with that knowledge, and the question is, from that knowledge, what contribution is emphasized? Net is aspect of education. To be specific, is the goal of education itself based on 2 different views. Main objective of these 2 views are developing human potential. For Western, emphasize the moral of the nation, emphasize spirituality, not the spirituality in the sense of religion, and also economic development and producing human resources, producing good citizens who will work hard for the development of the country. Islam, the concept of ta'lim, tarbiyah wa ta'dib, which means to know, to increase, and to be cultured or well-mannered, which is used to denote a knowledge being sought or imparted through instruction and teaching. It suggests a person's development of social behavior. Balanced growth of the total personality through training man's spirits, intellect, rational self, feeling, and bodily sense, such that faith is infused into the whole of his personality. The thing is not the same here, is a spiritual aspect. Basically, both of it have that part, but whether it relate with God and religion or not, that's the point. Alright, I think that's it from me, and shall me to pass the presentation to the next presenter. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. My name is NURUL and I'm going to present about the differences between Islamic and Western approaches to thinking based on the aspects of education, leadership, and morals. Al-Atas views Islamic education is to balance the growth of a man through the training of man's spirit, intellect, rational self, feeling, bodily sense, and to become good Khalifa. He also stated that it is more important to produce good men than good citizens because good men will become a good citizen. Islamic education makes us realize the purpose of our life. One of the objectives of education in Islam is education is the integral preparation of the good, dutiful, and wholesome individual physically, spiritually, and mentally. The Caliphate is responsible for implementing the Islamic faith and culture through education. Western educational theory is society center, which means to prepare them to become good citizens because humans need to socialize. And secondly is person-centered position, which means they focus on student needs based on their ability. Western also have other theories about education, which are conflict theory, functionalist view, and postmodernist view. Conflict theory believes that education helped the upper class more control than the working class, and the working class doesn't have the same opportunity as the upper class. The functionalist view is about education makes people unite and also prepare students for their career. In the postmodernist view, they see education increase a high level of thinking, research involvement, cooperation learning, service experiences, and many more. So we can see here that Islamic education focusing on the word knowledge and the hereafter and spiritualism compared to Western education that only focusing on word knowledge without focusing on spiritualism. Let's go to the next slide about leadership. In Islamic approach of leadership, everything we do is for Allah. Genuine taqwa and obedience are the things that should be considered in leadership. The leading system is based on Shura, which is a guide from Allah in the Quran. The role model of leadership in Islam is Prophet Muhammad SAW. The characteristics of leadership are amanah, siddiq, and fatana. Islamic leadership emphasizing amar ma'ruf, nahi munkar. While in Western approach in leadership, there are several theories. One of it is charismatic theory, which means credibility that includes aspect of knowledge, professionalism, transparency, and good image. A good image based on their status. In Islamic approach, we have a clear explanation based on what should leaders supposed to be based on Quran and Sunnah. Leader also makes sure that people in the right path and following the guidance of Allah. Western more to focus on characteristic of leader based on their own aim and according to their situation. Moving on to the next aspect, which is moral. Moral or ethic means ahlak. Amar ma'ruf nahi munkar is very important for us to maintain a good moral. Everything we do is for Allah, so it is important for us to do a good thing and not a bad thing. There are 5 classifications of action in Islam which are fard, mustahab, mubah, makruh, and haram. Al-Ghazali stated that ethics depends on religion. For example, in Islam, we cannot sell an alcohol drink because it's haram, while in Western, they can sell it. In Western approach, Patman views moral as socialization that come from habit, self-interest, and right or wrong thing to do in the Western approach. Good moral values come from a good personality. Islam makes sure that we always be in the right path and right purpose by giving the classification of action as a guideline for us. In Western, they don't have the guideline and it just based on themselves.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So I am Siti NURAISYAH binti SHAMSUL. So I'll be presenting about the advantages of Islamic approaches in thinking. Okay, there are actually a few of advantages of Islamic approaches in thinking. The first one is human beings are encouraged to think over the things that Allah calls us to think about too, and to see the hidden purposes and the creation of miracles. So by applying Islamic approaches in thinking, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala wants us to see the hidden purposes
of our creation or his creation in this world, and to see the miracles by him. So the encouragement to think has been stressed in the Quran since the very beginning of the emergence of Islam. The first surah revealed to Prophet Muhammad was Al-Alaq, a surah that encouraged the Prophet to read. Secondly, according to our former Prime Minister Datuk Sri Najib Razak, he called for the country's education system to focus on developing intellectual capital, saying the effort was necessary to equip the future generation with a higher order of thinking skills. In the future, the younger generation would have to occupy jobs which might not exist today, and the challenge of the country was to find ways to prepare them for that scenario. So, by applying Islamic approaches in thinking, it gives our future generation advantages in finding jobs in the future, because the future job may need more people to think in high order thinking skill or develop their creative thinking skill. So by applying this at the early stage of age, so it will help the younger generation to help them in the future, especially in finding their jobs. Next, the objective of teaching thinking is to prepare students for a long life journey or for a long life learning process in handling effective problem solving and decision making. So, Islamic thinking skill will help us in finding our own decision making, finding our own problem solving when we have to face some problem in our life. So it also helps students to make their own decision when most of people say that younger students couldn't make their own decision, but no, with the applying of Islamic approaches thinking skill, so it will actually help students for a long life learning process. So Bayatullah Kazmi is of the opinion that such thinking leads to an understanding that eventually enables a Muslim to be closer to Allah in order to grow spiritually and intellectually to realize his role in establishing social justice and freedom. So I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Alright, so the conclusion is the perspectives and thinking of various concepts are rooted from many aspects, including Islamic and Western aspects. Thus, the right thinking skills are necessary to provide rational and strong arguments that support our opinions. So, from our presentation of the differences and similarities of the Islamic and Western approaches to thinking, what we can conclude is that it is hard to define if each perspective is true or not. It depends on strong arguments and which perspectives that we prefer based on our own judgments. So that's all from our group. Thank you for watching and have a nice day. Assalamualaikum.